لن تغيبي يا منارا بلغ
We'll move on to the second part of the story, which is a very interesting story about Fatima radiallahu anha. And what happens is, one of these days, Rasulullah, he gets up, he prays Salat al-Dhuhr, takes one of the Sahabis from the masjid, and goes on. While he goes on, and he starts walking, the Sahabi is thinking, where is Rasulullah going? It's like Dhuhr time, it's extremely hot, nobody visits anybody this time, and the Sahabi kept walking. They come to a point where he comes to a house, enters the house. This is the house of who? Fatima. This was a particular time that Rasulullah would particularly, like a moment or an appointment that Rasulullah would go and visit Fatima. He entered and he realized something's wrong. He enters the house and he doesn't find Ali in the house. So he asks Fatima and he says, Ayna ibn Ammik? Where is the son or your cousin? Where is the son of your uncle? So Fatima radiallahu anha, she replies back and she says, كَانَ بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَهُ شَيْءٍ. There was something between me and him. فَغَضَبَنِي. So we both became angry at each other. فَخَرَجْ. So he left. فَخَرَجْ. So he left. Rasulullah at that point stopped talking to Fatima radiallahu anha, turned to the Sahabi outside, told the Sahabi, go and find Ali. The Sahabi, while Rasulullah is waiting, goes out, finds Ali, comes back, tells Rasulullah that he's in Masjid al-Nabawi. Rasulullah gets up from that place, Fatima's house, radiallahu anha's house, and he goes straight to where? To Ali radiallahu anha. He sees that Ali radiallahu anha is sleeping in the shade, like one of the wall. He's sleeping in the shade of the wall, right next to the wall, and he had some sort of a rida or an upper garment on top of him. And due to the wind blowing something, the upper garment had come off. So some of the dust and sand particles were on his face, his beard. And he was sleeping. Rasulullah bends down with all his affection and starts caressing the shoulder of Ali radiallahu anhu. And he says at that particular time, he says, Qum ya Aba Turab. Stand up, O sandman. Now it's pretty weird to translate this particular thing, sandman. What he's trying to say is, stand up, or wake up, O one that has sand upon you. But in Arabic, it's mentioned rhetorically, قُمْ يَا أَبَا تُرَابٍ قُمْ يَا أَبَا تُرَابٍ قُمْ يَا أَبَا تُرَابٍ. Now, it's a really small story, but let's go back once again and try to analyze some of the lessons. Firstly, Rasulullah, it was the norms of the Arab till this day that nothing takes place between Dhuhr to Asr. If you live in the Arabian Peninsula, you'll find out pretty soon in Dubai, like Dhuhr to Asr, everything is shut down. Like stores are shut down, everything's closed. Like what do you want to do? Like except convenience stores and pharmacies, everything else, malls are shut, everything is shut. Nothing's open. Why? Because it's so hot. So that was the same norm in those days. People would just pray Salat al-Dhuhr and go straight to where? They would go straight to their houses, spend time with their families, qaylula, whatever they had to do, and then in Asr time they would come back and life would start back to normal. Rasulullah sacrifices his own rest time. This was a time that he would spend with his family. And he's going out on a journey in the outskirts of Medina to visit his own daughter. Which tells us a very important lesson that as fathers, it's very important that after your daughters actually do become married, that you regularly visit them in their houses. This allows for an affectionate bond that you already had with your daughter to become even more stronger. And we see that many times. Another story we see, he goes and he visits, Rasulullah visits Fatima and just meets Hassan and comes back. Then he goes another time, just meets, and so it's so mutawatir inside that you find that many times Rasulullah is constantly going to Fatima and building this bond. So the question that remains for us is, fathers who have gotten their daughters married off, when was the last time we sacrificed our weekends to actually take some time out and visit our own daughters in their own houses? Lesson number 2. You see, Rasulullah was accompanied with a Sahabi. The Sahabi never asked Rasulullah where he was going. He never asked Rasulullah where he was going. And he carried on the journey. Why? Because he was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we find that Sahabas had this high level of respect for Rasulullah, which unfortunately today, some of the scholars, when they're mentioning about Rasulullah, when they're talking stories, it seems to be that it's not there. they're telling the hadith, but you don't feel that there's the respect that is required from to Rasulullah is given to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The third lesson that we get out of the story is when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam enters the house, he soon realizes that there's something wrong. He could have said, Aina Ali? Sah? He could have said, Aina Ali? Or he could have said, Aina, where is your husband? Aina zawjatuk? But Rasulullah used the word Ibn Ammik. This was for the reason to remind Fatima radiallahu anha that yes, you did become angry with your husband, which is normal, it takes place. But remember that you also have silatul qaraba, you have a kinship to Ali radiallahu anha. So trying to spark that extra love that is required to get over this particular issue. So trying to remind her, Aina ibn Ammi. Fatima radiallahu anha replies, and which is the fourth lesson for us, in specifically for the sisters. What did she say? She said, كَانَ بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَهُ شَيْءٍ. There was something between me and him. فَغَاضَبًا. So we both became angry. فَخَرَجْ. So he left. She did not put the full blame on Ali. Neither did she give Rasulullah ﷺ a half-hour lecture on what her husband did. Very concise, to the point that gets the message across. Because she had taken tarbiyah in the house of Rasulullah ﷺ. And I say that to sisters, once you get married, there is no benefit that you get out when you and your husband get into a small quarrel and you call up your mom, or you call up your aunt or some relatives and tell them what happened. That just destroys your own privacy. And it's just not very healthy for you. And it's also not very fitting on the mother's part or the father's part to dwell into these issues. And that's what we see Rasulullah doing. He did not ask Fatima. Fatima gave Rasulullah a very concise answer, which was for a normal father not enough. Okay? Not enough. So Rasulullah did not dwell into the fact that what happened, who did it, who was at fault, who started it, tell me the beginning, tell me the end. None of that. Rather, he took a corrective measure altogether, which was what? To make Fatima radiallahu anha realize that the right of the husband is so high, and it should never come to a point that your husband becomes angry. So he stopped talking to Fatima in the narration. He didn't talk to Fatima after that. And he went right away to the Sahabi and told him what? Go and find her. Another lesson we find is look at the Sahabi's obedience. He didn't say in the city of 4,000 to 5,000 estimated Sahabis living in that particular time, he didn't say to Rasulullah, where would I find him? Where is he? Do you know where he, where was he? I didn't talk to even, please ask Fatima which direction did he go? Did he go north or south? A command came from Rasulullah Sami'na wa ata'na. And he left alatul. He goes out straight. And what happens? Comes back with the news of Ali radiallahu anhu. Now oftentimes we do obedience, but sometimes what happens, we go overboard to the call of obedience. So what happens is, if you and I or some other brothers would be in a spot, and you know that Rasulullah is calling a specific individual, and that individual is sleeping, what would you do when you find him? You'd wake him up, you're like, brother, Rasulullah is looking for you, man, go get him. Go meet Rasulullah, he's looking for you. But that Sahabi, his sheer utmost obedience that he saw Ali, he could have woken him up. And that could have been completely fine. Why? Because Rasulullah is a Nabi. Be his father-in-law. See his elder cousin who took care of him like a father. So there's three reasons for that Sahabi, because of the status of Rasulullah higher on Ali radiallahu, that the Sahabi could have easily woken him up and said, listen Ali, by the way, Rasulullah is calling for you. But his sheer obedience, and he just comes back and says, he's sleeping in the corner of Masjid al-Nabi. At that point, Rasulullah he gets up and he leaves. And he goes to where? He goes to Ali radiallahu anhu. When he comes to Ali radiallahu anhu, he starts caressing him softly, trying to wake him up. And he says the word that I told you, قُمْ يَا أَبَا تُرَابٍ قُمْ يَا أَبَا تُرَابٍ. In order for us to actually understand the whole scene of how everything took place, we can understand it from this one statement of Ali radiallahu anhu. When he was asked, what's the most beloved name to you? He replied back that after the day Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came to me and called me Aba Turab, there is no name more beloved to me than the name of Aba Turab. In order to realize, imagine the facial expressions of Rasulullah. How would he have smiled at Ali? And imagine he's going to his daughter's husband, who has just made her his daughter, and there's been a fight between his daughter. And he's trying to bring this emotional love and affection into that Ali radiallahu anhu never forgot that moment. So much so that the words that Rasulullah uttered on that particular day became engraved in his heart, and he would prefer to be called Aba Turab over anything else. So, a question for most father-in-laws, that can we draw, or can we have so much impact on our son-in-laws from our love and care that they remember us as someone long before after we're gone.
صمت أنين من بعيد ابتدى يشتكي من قبضتي وبعزمي شهدا